Michel, Forst, curious to ask if you share the positivity, if we can keep that going. But you've been, of course, focused on these issues for a long time in many guises. Curious to hear your perspective on the state of play for environmental human rights defenders and the extent to which we can be optimistic about the role they're able to play in shaping policy.
Thank you. Maybe we could start with a few words on the mandate, because it's a new mandate that has been created in 2021 and has been appointed in 2022 for this new mandate. And the beauty of the mandate is that it has been created within a legally binding instrument as one of the two mechanisms of this Aahrus Convention. One is the Compliance Committee with the treaty body, and my mandate as Special Rapporteur is inside this convention. And my role is simply to protect environmental defenders at risk using all tools and methods of work that Special Rapporteur are using. When I started with this mandate, I wanted to hear from defenders themselves in countries what were the views on this new mechanism before developing a vision for the mandate. So we started to visit more like, I would say, 25, 26 countries, inviting defenders to meet with us, with myself, just to share their experiences. And really, we were impressed by all testimonies received from those sometimes young activists trying to go to the street to protest against the inaction of states on climate issues. What they told us, it's like four jaws of a world trap. The first is the way politicians are calling those activists eco-terrorists, green Talibans, green Khmers, which also leads mainstream media to also relay information and to disseminate in the population the idea that those people are dangerous for the country. The third is the law enforcement. When they are going to the street to demonstrate, they are facing brutality of the police in some countries, but also when they are arrested in police stations. We got many testimonies on how they were treated by police officers, including humiliation for women defenders. And then they are brought to court and sometimes sentenced to very harsh sentences, like 4 years prison in the UK, 5 years also in the UK. And then the government will decide to develop new legislation to target those climate activists. And all those information coming from defenders led us, the team and myself, to develop in 2024 a position paper on civil disobedience based on international human rights law. And in that document, which is available on the website, you will find 5 calls for action for states on the right to protest and civil obedience. And since then, we have decided to develop a set of guidelines, guidance for states on how to better use international obligations to when they are facing peaceful protests from climate activists. And happy to say that the guidelines are now, as of today, public on the website of the mandate. So I would invite all those who are interested in reading the guidelines and disseminating the guidelines also to others to look into the set of recommendations, and hoping that states will also understand the need to change their way to approach civil obedience and those people who are using new forms of mobilization and are facing so many strong attacks coming from governments.
I'll turn back to our special rapporteur here, Michel Forst, on this issue of the enabling environment for defenders. You've written and spoken a lot about repression, about civil disobedience. Can you speak to us about what the current state of play is on this enabling environment?
Yeah, thank you. We have at the UN a very good understanding of what is unsafe and enabling environment for defenders. One of my predecessors, he was the second special rapporteur on defenders, Margaret Segaia, presented a report in which she tried to convey to state a message on how to establish what she called then at the time a safe and enabling environment for defenders with a set of 8 elements. And if you check the current situation with those 8 elements, you would see that the situation is far from being ideal for defenders, in fact. The first was to establish what she called a conducive legal framework for defenders, and what we see the contrary currently. We see in many countries new legislations being developed to target precisely environmental defenders. We see in countries the use of new charges to target defenders, like the charge of sabotage in Sweden, which has never been used since World War II, on the charge of conspiracy in the UK also to target defenders. Impunity was the second element of a safe and enabling environment, and what we see, the contrary, in fact. The fight against impunity is far from being won. And if you read the report by Global Witness, you will see that the situation is very dire for defenders, and impunity has not, despite the efforts made by UNDP or HHR, far from be what we are expecting. The third element is a positive element. It was to see whether or not we could establish in state what she called strong and neutralize to support defenders. And what we see is that in many countries, in fact, states have understood the need to establish strong and neutralize national institutions to protect defenders. And since 2018, some of them have adopted a work plan on the protection of defenders with a view to better protect defenders, especially climate activists. The fourth element was to pay special attention to women defenders. And what I see when I'm meeting with women defenders in my mission to countries is that many of them are still facing gender-based violence because they are women, also because they are defenders. And that's something which is need to be addressed. The other element was a role for non-state actors because they need to understand also their responsibility when targeting defenders, because in many countries, companies are more dangerous than states, and some of them are trying to develop guidance for their subsidiaries or contractors on how to better protect and understand defenders. Another element was to make sure that we would have a safe access for defenders to the UN and other mechanisms, and happy to say that that's the case now. We have new special rapporteurs dealing with defenders, climate. Elisa is in the room today on environment. Other rapporteurs also are doing their best to develop also guidance and to take cases of defenders at risk. And that's really good to see that many of them have now an access to the UN and other international bodies. And that's the same also with Council of Europe, which is also doing a lot to protect environmental defenders in the field of the Council of Europe. The last element was to make sure that states will understand the need to develop strong and diverse communities of defenders. And with the current state of play, with the cutting of funding from the US, but also from many agencies, we see in many countries communities of defenders which are currently starving. In fact, thousands of small organizations are starving because of the lack of funding coming from the US, but also from other funders. So that's very complicated for them to have a safe and enabling environment. What we see is more a sort of precarious and polarized environment for defenders, in which we see risk escalating than what we saw in the past. And maybe two last elements, which are new compared to what we have seen in the past, is the increasing use of slaps against defenders to target defenders who try to silence them. And we need to make sure that states would develop anti-slap legislations precisely to fight against the use by companies or others to target defenders.